Right, so I'm going to carry on looking at prompts, but doing it a slightly different way. So previously we've just put information in terms of, can you make maybe a scheme of work around this? And I haven't really sort of like put any information in there to really guide it. I mean, obviously I've done quite an explicit prompt, but it kind of doesn't really sort of like, I haven't given it the content that I really want it to focus on. So I'm going to do something slightly different in this video. So in my tones, I'm going to choose, I'm just going to go for the precise tone on this one. It's a little bit slower, it seems, but it seems to work a bit better in terms of like how concise it is and so on. So I've got my prompts already done, which I'm going to copy from here. So again, we're looking at A Christmas Carol. So I've taken a big chunk, which is from an exam question, and I've popped it in. So I'll just paste that in and just explain what I'm doing here. So here, what I'm saying is I want it to analyse the literary extract. So again, I'm giving it the role, the purpose, the role of an English teacher, being explicit in terms of what it wanted to cover, the themes of the novella Christmas Carol, using solo taxonomy just to focus on this particular extract. And I've taken this directly from a question paper. So you can see I put the text in there from the question paper. It's the extracts that's used. I want to get a bit more understanding, really. So I could do this either as a class teacher or even students could do this as well. So it could be used as a kind of revision tool to amplify content, etc. So if I just run that prompt now and just wait for it to kind of respond. So you can see there it's kind of like it's taken on the role as class teacher, and it's going through the levels, just focused on this extract, which is around sort of like isolation and loneliness, and it's starting to put out the different levels. And I can sort of, as a teacher, I can build upon this just to deepen and develop their understanding about what the extract is saying and how to sort of like analyze the extracts. And we can start the kind of like the most basic level in terms of the characters that are included in that, the setting and so on, and then we can develop that up in terms of like the bigger picture in terms of the kind of societal values and the neglects of the poor and vulnerable, etc. So that's what that's done in terms of the extract I put in there. Now I haven't really said, well, what is a theme to focus on. So I've got this kind of analysis and understanding, which then I could use with my class to sort of like develop the better understanding of the extract. If I go back to the prompt that I've pre-written here, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to sort of like focus on what I want it to look at in particular here, which is the theme of isolation and just grab that, isolation and loneliness, which is what the question from the exam paper is actually asking. So again, I can sort of like start delving a bit deeper into this and just identify and explain with examples themes related to isolation and loneliness. So if we just set that off now, it's going to hopefully start focusing on the themes. So here we go. You can start looking at the isolation, the aspects of isolation in the extracts, sort of like pulling out some of the quotes, which I've asked it to do, looking at, in terms of like trying to better understand it. We've got the theme of like loneliness as well. And so, it's sort of like pulls out examples within that, focusing on the kind of exam question around that extract. And you can see it's sort of like, from a student point now, that'd be quite good in terms of better understanding it and putting out specifics and examples when analysing this particular extract. And then it's giving you some pointers in terms of, how to sort of relate that. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back again, because I want a bit more, I'm going to focus on this breakdown. I'm going to break this down in terms of the assessment objectives. So if I start looking at this in here, so my next prompt, so I can just keep going back to it, just copying that and going back. And this is a great thing about when you're working with something like Copilot. You can to and fro, and I've got quite a few prompts available to me within this kind of session. So let's break down the AO1, AO2 and AO3 assessment objectives, right again in UK English. And then you can see it started up breaking that down. So I'm giving them, as I go through my prompts, I'm getting more and more specific and more explicit in terms of what I want it to focus on in particular. So you can see there, read, understand, respond to text, so students will be able to maintain a critical style and develop informed personal response. It explains what it is, and then textual references, including quotations. And then in AO2, you can see the example of imagery and metaphor in a poem, for example. So it's kind of quite general. But then I can sort of like ask it to focus on one particular part of that. So as I'm going through my prompts, It might not be perfect in terms of what I want. You're honing it as you go through. So I'll go back to my what I've done here, and this is what I wanted to focus on kind of finally here. So these are the questions which I've pulled out of the exam paper. I'm not an English, teacher, so I wanted to focus on these two kind of like aspects of the exam paper now. So if I put that in, so I'm just developing as I go. So right, so it's about isolation, loneliness in the extract, but also then isolation and loneliness in the novel as a whole. So it's going beyond the extract that I've kind of like put into the prompts. And then I've asked it to structure their response. So I'm giving students a kind of like a framework to how to develop that and how to include the AO1, AO2 and AO3 objectives from that. So you can see AO1 here, understanding interpretation, discuss your personal interpretation extracts and novel as a whole. I mean, you want to say this presents loneliness and isolation through the character of Scrooge and settings he describes. And then we start building that up in terms of AO2 and AO3. Again, it might not be perfect. You might want to go back to it and just say, well, you want to focus on this in particular. It's just about crafting that perfect kind of like prompts and then developing it. And the last thing I'm going to do here is just say, right, what I want you to do is write me a kind of like a middle band response. Now, I've not put the mark scheme in here, but I could copy and paste the mark scheme and say, right, use the mark scheme, use indicative content, create me like a low, middle and top band response, which, students can then pull apart or analyse and look at how it could be developed. So I can put in that, put my last prompt, which is write a middle band response to the questions, writing UK English. So here we have the introduction. So AChristmasCarol themes of loneliness and isolation prevalence. And then it starts putting it in sort of like the kind of understanding interpretation. Scrooge is showing he's passed by the ghosts. And then it just starts developing that and it starts adding it in. I mean, obviously you wouldn't write AO1, AO2, etc. The structure of it probably needs a bit more kind of like tweaking, I would say, from that. But that's part and parcel of when you are working with Copilot or another platform. It's just making, sort of like developing it and asking it to go into more detail. So I might say, okay, well, that's, probably not as much as I want. I might say, okay, well, I want a bit more in that. It is giving me some ideas in terms of a higher band, but I haven't given it the mark scheme. So there's going to be some kind of like area where, it needs developing. I might need to then go back to the mark scheme and pull out the content for that and then ask it to create a middle band answer based upon that. So you can see what we've done over the course of 5 prompts is it out of the 30 that I've got available in this session. I've got the extract, I've amplified it. I might sort of like, as a student, I might say, well, let's just copy that bit, and then just as a last thing here. So a student might say, I don't understand this last part of the extract. What is it? What is it showing, or what is it, or sort of like, however you want to do that. I'll just paste that in there. So I understand this part about what is explained, or no, that's very good, is it? Can you explain this to me? Particularly, you might want to sort of like focus on around isolation and loneliness. Okay, so I'm just focusing on this one part of the extract, and hoping that Copilot will then break that down and then help me better understand kind of like how Dickens has written this part, and putting out some of the themes. So you can see here, this part of the text is vivid description of the quiet and the emptiness that surrounds Scrooge. So you're kind of like building this picture in terms of where we can sort of pull out themes of isolation and loneliness. And again, he does that when he's talking about leafless boughs and so on. So it's really how you want to do it. But what I'm trying to show you is that when you put content into it, specific content in it, that you can then work with that and sort of like going backwards and forwards and tweak it. So again, from a student, you might say, I've got this extract, I don't quite understand it. It's, how it's written. Can you explain it to me? Can you provide examples? Can you, what should be focused on that? Then you can start adding in mark scheme. You can start adding in specific questions and so on, and pushing in more content makes it much more focused in terms of what you are trying to do and what you are trying to achieve within Copilot. And yeah, obviously you can use this for any particular subject. It's not just English, but you might be, across other subjects as well, which is a really good way to use this technology.